Okay, so welcome everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. I do want to give all of you as much time as possible to listen to and communicate with our panelists this afternoon. So I am going to start moving along. I'm sure we'll be bringing more and more people into the room. But welcome. I am Allison Lafferlita. I'm the Executive Director for the Nonprofit Resource Hub. For those of you that are joining us and you don't know about the Hub, we're a trade association whose mission is to serve, be a resource to, educate and connect our members to the nonprofit community. We foster relationships, commonality, business problem solving, mentorship, and advice with the support on our philanthropic partners in doing the good work that they do for the community at large. So what does that mean for you? If you provide services or goods to the nonprofit community, we are a place you want to be part of. We're a community you want to be part of. We are great connectors to our members and our nonprofit partners. If you are interested in joining and you haven't yet, please do go to our website, and I'm always happy to answer any questions you may have. So welcome to the NRH. I would like to start off briefly just by touching on why we are having today's event. We are going through probably one of the most extraordinary times in history, especially when it comes to employment. And this is a time when we keep hearing about the Great Resignation, people burning out, people are moving, people want different things from their careers, from their employers. So we thought this would be a really good time to get together with our panel of experts and talk about what employers are doing to recruit top talent, keep them, and sustain them as happy employees. So we have a great panel of industry experts lined up for you today, and I would like to offer them each a moment to introduce themselves. So without further ado, I would like to start with Jennifer Loftus. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Allison, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. As Allison mentioned, my name's Jennifer Loftus, and I'm one of the founding partners at Astron Solutions, which is a compensation consulting firm headquartered here in New York City and a proud member of the Nonprofit Resource Hub. And our client base spans the entire United States with a primary focus on nonprofits. So I've got lots of insights, lots of stories to share with all of you today, as you obviously have an interest in knowing about attracting, retaining, and engaging talent. And that is the question for today.
Thank you. Ed Probst.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ed Probst, the Vanguard agency. Welcome, everyone. Glad you could all be with us today. We have a great panel. I'm excited to be part of this. We have been an employee benefits consulting firm since 1999. So for 23 years, we've been serving the nonprofit sector, providing benefit strategies that help them retain and attract top talent. I particularly have some expertise with the employee relationship, as our firm has been very focused on one-on-one education over the years for employees, and that's put me in front of thousands, literally, of employees over the years, hearing what they like, what they don't like about their benefits and their employer. So I think, and I hope that I can share some insights today that you can bring back to your organization that are worthwhile. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Ed. And last but not least, Matt Thompson.
Good afternoon, everyone. Matt Thompson. I work at Morgan Stanley. We're based here on Long Island, but have a national presence. We do a lot of work with nonprofits, as my fellow panelists, throughout the United States, and really hear the stories from a board level, a management level, as well as an employee level of what they're looking for. And we sort of try and work with people like Jennifer and Ed and the other members of the Hub on trying to craft a program or an opportunities for employees and employers to really understand what's going on and how to best attract and retain their talent. So look forward to sharing some insights today.
Thank you so much. So we want to ensure that anybody who's taking their lunch break with us is getting the most out of your experience with us. So just briefly before we actually get started, a few quick ground rules to help us communicate best with you. If you have any questions, we certainly encourage you to ask them. Please just hit the hand icon, raise your hand, and type your question into the chat, and we will call on you to ask your question. We do ask that everybody keep muted otherwise. This way, any background noise does not become a distraction, obviously. And also, if you have any really multifaceted questions or questions that go beyond the scope of what we can offer you today, we do ask you to table those questions, send them to us, and we will connect you with the appropriate panelist to help have a more in-depth conversation with you outside of today's event. So we are now going to start. Once again, welcome. I am Allison LaFerlita, Executive Director for the Nonprofit Resource Hub. Again, please do ask your questions, but I have some lined up that we are going to start with. So I'm going to present this to all of our panelists. As we see changes in the economy, housing market, and interest rates starting to rise, the unprecedented job market we've been experiencing is expected to take a turn. How long do you see this lasting in terms of what we have been experiencing, and what changes do you anticipate with this new shift?
All right. Well, I guess I'll jump in and get things started here, and certainly Ed and Matt join in as well. And this is that magic ball, type of question, or crystal ball type of question, where everyone wants to know, right? We have been going so fast and furious trying to retain and attract talent over the last couple of years. We're exhausted, right? Is there any end in sight? And Allison, I love that question. I'm going to answer it with a bit of a hedge, right? So if things continue the way that they are, based on what I'm seeing and I'm hearing, I think we're in this for another 18 months, right? So I'm thinking by the end of 2023, we should really start to see a settling into a new normal. And the reason that I say with a hedge is because a lot of that is dependent on what the economy does, right? If we listen to the news and we do our reading, we see, well, there's talk that a recession is coming, right? It might be small, it might be big, we don't know. But we know that when recessions happen, they have a dramatic impact on the employment dynamics. So if there's going to be a recession, that take my recommendation or my thoughts and, throw those out the window. If that recession doesn't happen, or if it's very, very small, I think we've got another 18 months of this rapid fire pace. I don't know, Ed, how about you? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Jennifer's saying. I would just add, I think there's some factors that go into this, including location, geographically, job, class, industry, all that plays into this. I think that there are some changes that have been made that could be long-term, if not permanent. I think the shift in employee mentality when it comes to what they're looking for an employer has changed. I think that everyone over the last 2 years is more in tune with health and wellness and being stress-free and knowing that life is short. And that mentality, I think, will continue to evolve over the years, which will create some more. I think employees are expecting more of their employer, and I think that will continue. I also do think that the remote capabilities of employers will continue to play out, and as more employers are starting to be are okay with employees working remotely, that will create a lot of competition in the marketplace as it is right now. So I think those two things will continue to evolve. Matt?
Yeah, to sort of dovetail a little of that, I do think right now we're probably are entering some form of a recession. I think it's going to be a different type of recession than people have seen in the past. This is really a supply recession. Normally it's demand goes away and then companies have to lay off one. This one right now, we're in a recession because we can't get enough goods and services out there into the marketplace for people to generate revenue. The reason I'm saying that is if you look right now, we had the postings came out. There's a huge listing of unfilled positions throughout the United States. Not every industry, certain industries have more than others, but generally speaking, I don't see a huge layoff of workforce that you normally would see in a recession. This could be a recession where people have their jobs, they're just maybe not filling them as quickly, but it's going to be a different type of one. So I would think about it. This isn't what we've seen in the past of your traditional recessions where you have a mass layoff of employees flooding the marketplace. I just unfortunately don't see that company. And I think employers need to think a little bit differently as they approach this potentially type of recession.
Matt, your comments are so timely. I just was reading an email about an hour ago from the Society for Human Resource Management, or SHRM, and they were saying that as of, I guess, the end of April, there's 11 million job openings out there. And even if everyone on unemployment were able to fill those jobs, there'd still be a delta of 5 million, I think it was, job openings. And on top of that, last month, 4.5 million people left their employer to change jobs, which was on top of 4.35 million the month before and 4.25 the month before. So I hear you on those job openings.
So Jennifer, that actually is a great entree into our next question, because there are jobs available and people are being very particular about what they're signing up for and what they want and what their expectations are. So how do you see how the recruiting process has actually changed, even though we're constantly, it seems like, shifting and changing throughout this entire process? What are you seeing as a panel, just being out there and working with people who are in this process? What are you seeing in terms of the recruiting process and how it's changed and what candidates are looking for and what they want from a new employer?
Mm-hmm. Well, as I'm thinking about my own experiences with my clients, I'm hearing a few different things related to this. And part is the idea of, now that we have the ability to work remotely, like you mentioned, Ed, that in theory, we could hire people anywhere across the country, right? Assuming it's not a job where you have to physically be there, right? Like a nurse or a sales clerk or something of that sort. And that's a shift, a whole different way of thinking for many organizations, although that comes with some caveats, right? We have to think about the legal considerations and the HR considerations associated with a distributed or a remote workforce. But I'm seeing that. I'm also seeing organizations being more transparent in their job postings in terms of the reality of what it's like to work at this organization, our culture, our compensation, what we expect from you, employee, and what you can expect from us as the employer. I'm seeing organizations change their job descriptions to be more inclusive, to facilitate hiring along a diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI lens as well. So that's a few changes that I've seen. Matt, how about you?
We're seeing a lot of the similar types of things. I think you really have to, the interesting part is going to be, as people work remotely, you're now seeing employers readjusting compensation based no longer on where you're, if you were hired for a company in New York, you're paid at one rate. And if you decide to move to Maine, you're seeing employers adjust compensation. So I think that's something that you really need to think about, because as we go to this remote working environment, you're going to see employers adjust compensation structures based on physical location. So I think it's something that's, popping up now more than ever before.
Yeah, and I would say that employees are still looking for the core type of benefits that are typically provided. Salary benefits are always going to be important. However, right now, I think work-life balance is a very big need of employees, and that's what they're searching for. I think the fact that flexible schedules, remote working, maybe family accommodations, leadership in the workplace, perk type benefits. I think these all are key differentiators in the recruiting process, and I think that will continue to play out as the years go on. I mean, mental health. I mean, one thing that we're seeing is, and this has been true over the years, in our one-on-one interviews with employees, one of the most common questions, or if not the most common question, is what type of mental health benefits is my employer providing? I just saw a SHRM study that said 76% of all employees surveyed were expecting their employer to support them and their mental health needs, whether that be through health insurance products or on-site stress reduction seminars, or yoga. Group yoga has become a popular, or meditation sessions, things like that, to support mental well-being. I think job flexibility, work-life balance, and supporting mental well-being will be important factors in the recruiting process.
So that also lends itself to a question I didn't necessarily have prepared, but we do have organizations that are working within pretty tight budgets, and there's somewhat of a panic. How can they retain and keep those that are great employees, and how can they bring in new employees that will, run the length with them and still feel like they're appreciated, they're getting great benefits. So we talked about all these other the benefits that are offered. But is that enough? That's really the question. Is a really robust benefits package enough to keep an employee when perhaps the salary isn't as competitive as it may be elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to start in that one. I think the short answer is no. I think it's more than that. Employees are looking for employers of choice to work for. They're being more selective in their employer choices going on a regular basis now. And going back to something I said before, where work-life balance has become such an important part of it, I think that you can definitely, you can't really win the employee these days just on benefits and salary alone. And but you could definitely lose it based on if you don't provide it. So I think salary benefits are more of a given now. It's the other types of services that employees are looking for. And I think organizations need to get more creative in how they go about doing that, right? And I think one thing, if you're working on a tight budget, or if you don't really have a budget for benefits, I think it's important that organizations have to look at selling their mission very, very well to candidates. I think candidates nowadays want to be connected. They want to be engaged with their employers. They want to work for employers of choice. And when it's hard to compete, whether it be salary or benefit wise, it's important that you stress to your candidates the good work that you're doing. So I like to say, I see a lot of organizations that are doing a great job with that when they're recruiting donors, and they want to show the donors how great their organization is doing, and how the day-to-day operations really impact. I think that candidates are just as important. Social impact is huge nowadays, and candidates will be judging their employers based on those. So I think it's important to stress that in your recruiting process.
And Ed, if I can piggyback off of what you shared here, absolutely, that mission can be so critical. I'm thinking about a number of organizations that I work with, which are in variations on nonprofit finance or green banks or green lending, those kinds of things. And so many times I hear from those employees that, sure, we could make a lot more money on Wall Street, but I'm here for something different, right? I'm here to make a difference in the world and to have that work-life balance and some peace of mind and all those good things. So I'm right there with you, Ed. And if I'm thinking about some other things, it's important to be honest with employees and talk with them and say, here's the reality of what we can do when it comes to salary and benefits, and here's what we can't do and why we can't do it. So that way people don't fill in the gaps with their own narrative or their own story. And as you mentioned also, it's important to be creative, right? So think, is it more paid time off that might be of interest, or hybrid work schedules more than might already be occurring in that organization? Or learning and development, right? The opportunity to grow my skills and competencies as an employee. That can be a huge part of the total rewards package as well.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, Jennifer, and then I'll let Matt go. I would say it's important. Surveys can be huge in that regard, right? Let's talk to your existing employees. Why are they working for you? What do they like about what you're offering? And you can use that as information to create your recruiting packages and what you should stress on.
Yeah, I think the other thing we as an employer needs to think about is making sure the employees understand their benefits. There's a lot of cases where there's a disconnect between what the employer believes they're offering and what the employee thinks that they're receiving. So I think that's a key component there. And nonprofits are in a unique position as well, is that you all have a board of directors that is thoroughly attached to your mission. Use them as a resource. And what I mean by that is offer them as speakers, offer them as mentors to your employees to try and think about what's going on. You have a unique feature there to do. The thing I always tell people is to attract and retain talent. Also, try and promote from within whenever possible, because you need to allow employees that start as at the bottom end to see that there's an opportunity to move all the way up to the highest level. And a lot of organizations forget about that, and try and whenever those cultivate those things, or work with your employees on how to get to that next step and what do they need to do, or what other types of things that they should look to do that. That would be, I think, helps a lot on retention and recruiting, because your employees can be your best voice in your company.
So Ed brought up a term called employer of choice. And I'm not sure if you could elaborate on a little bit of that. What actually defines or makes a company an employer of choice?
I think a lot of what we've just already discussed. An employer of choice is all about culture. It's, when you're an employer of choice, your employees are showing up every day, happy to come to work. They're engaged, they're connected with the senior leadership of your organization. They're not walking in every day saying, I hate my boss. They have career paths, they have job stability, they have great benefit packages. But overall, I think it's just a place that people are desiring to work. So your candidates, your employees, one good sign of it is and Matt touched on this a little bit, but if your employees are referring other candidates to you on a regular basis, that's a great sign that you're achieving employer of choice status, because that really means that's a great testimony to your organization.
That's very true. Before I move on to the next question, I do want to offer anybody that's with us today, if you have any questions that you would like to ask, any challenges that perhaps we're not addressing that we could during our time together, please do put that in the chat and just raise your hand and we will be sure to call out on you. I'm sure as we're going along this conversation, you probably are starting to develop some questions that maybe we are just not necessarily answering just yet. So the next question is, how should I identify my organization's peer group for compensation and benefits benchmarking?
All right. Well, I'll start on the compensation side. I can touch a little bit on benefits, but I'll defer to the benefits experts for that part. And this is it's a tough question, right? And if I think back to maybe 5 or 10 years ago, it was pretty easy, right? I am organization X and I know who my direct competitors are. So let's generally benchmark against those characteristics and we're good to go. But so many organizations, their service portfolio that they provide has changed. Their talent markets have changed as well. So as a result, what I'm advising my clients to do is look at a variety of different markets. So we might say, let's look at social service nonprofits with approximately 50 employees on Long Island. Let's look at that. But also, let's look at the all employers market, right? Just let's look at Long Island big picture and see what's going on there. There may be some other variations on that as well. Why would we do that, right? Because we think, oh, we're not directly competing, right, against every employer out there. Maybe not, but maybe you are, right? Think about where your talent, when you're attracting and hiring, where they're coming from and where you're losing your talent to. It's important to keep both of those ends of the talent funnel in mind. So that way we're casting our net as wide as possible to get the most thorough benchmarking from a cash compensation perspective. Matt or Ed, your thoughts on the benefits side?
Would you like to go first or? Okay. Yeah, so not so different on the benefit side. On the benefit side, you're typically going to be gauging your benchmarking on your organization, type of organization, what your mission is, the amount of employees you have, and your annual revenues. That's typical. Where are you going to get this information from? Your benefits broker will definitely be a key source to provide benchmark reports. That's something, I would say this is probably the single greatest question we get from our employers is, how am I doing against my peers? Is this competitive enough to what they're offering? So I would go to your benefits broker for that information. They can provide benchmarking reports that can match up your plans, deductibles, copays, premiums, and that can be based on, as I mentioned, geographic location, revenues, number of employees. It's all in those type of reports. Payroll companies would be another great resource for this type of information, or HR consultants. I'm sure that I've actually seen one of Jennifer's reports, and it was quite thorough. So I know she does a great job at providing that type of information. So that's where you go. I think the parameters of that report are very similar from compensation standpoint. Matt?
Yeah, I think the other thing you can potentially look at is doing, exit interviews with your employees to sort of see where they're going and why. Gives you an idea as to that one. And the other thing that people don't do is interviews on the way in. Why do they pick you versus someone else? They probably had other choices out there. And what was the reason that they liked you? Whether is it the mission, is it certain aspects of the organization, those types of things, because then it can help you sort of craft your messaging a little bit better, and you'll get some feedback and guidance along those types of things. Benchmarking is always important, but every organization is unique, especially in the nonprofit space, and try and hone into what's making you different amongst, you're doing that with your donors, do that with your employees as well.
And I'll just add to what I said before, specifically, we get asked this question a lot, specifically related to health insurance, right? Your two biggest expenses are typically going to be your compensation and your health benefits if you're providing health benefits, or at least top three. So we get asked this question quite often, and it really that's really where you have to hone in, particularly on group size, because you might have an organization that has 20 employees and you're benchmarking against a similar type of organization that has 120 employees, and they have access to different products, and market plays a big part in that as well. If you're benchmarking your health insurance benefits in New York to a health insurance benefit plan that's in Ohio or Oklahoma, you're not going to get a very good indication of what you should be offering your employees. So I think health insurance, particularly in the benefit side, is important to key in on.
And Matt, you raised an interesting point there. You're thinking about those onboarding interviews. And then we also hear about stay interviews, right? Why do people stay with your organization? And as I was listening, I thought to myself, well, yes, when we're looking to attract and then also retain talent, there's a lot of the HR aspects. There are the operational aspects associated with that. But there's a marketing component. And so many times that marketing component is not thought of, ignored, seen as inappropriate. So for all of our attendees here or watching the recording, if you haven't looked at your materials that you use when you are posting jobs or on your organization's website and looked at them through a marketing lens, now's a great time to do that and see where can we maybe truthfully, but where can we jazz up, right? To catch the eye of maybe a passively interested potential candidate. Just yesterday, I was working with a client. They focus on children's mental health services. And I know they have an outstanding comp and benefits package, but to look on their website, their new VP of HR said it's atrocious, right? And if you look, it's just a bulleted list. Right now, we need to get some content on there. Why is our medical plan awesome? Why do you want to work here with this outstanding retirement plan, et cetera? Right. So take that marketing aspect as well.
Jennifer, do you see that happening a lot on the websites for nonprofit organizations where they are really putting some time and effort into developing that marketing piece for potential employees?
Sadly, not as much. I should be. I would say in the last 6 months, I've started to hear more organizations saying, hey, we need to really take a look at this, not the content of the benefits package, but the presentation of that benefits package to distinguish ourselves from the competition, and as Ed and Matt were sharing, make us an employer of choice, right, from the perspective of those candidates. So this is an up and coming trend that we're seeing.
And another question that I had, because I think sometimes we all rely on our old reliable go-tos when we're looking for talent, but I would imagine that employers have to be more creative today. What are some of the more creative spaces employers have been seeking for new talent?
Sounds like, Allison, you're looking for the secret sauce, right? So that we can all tap into that and find that star employee. Well, as you ask that question, I'm thinking about another client of mine. They're a credit union out in Hawaii. And we were having this very discussion, right? Where do you find your new bank tellers or mortgage loan underwriters or those kinds of things or those kinds of roles? And it was fascinating to me that they weren't saying, well, we're going to a Chase or a Wells Fargo, right? The typical financial services that you think. They said, we get a lot of great employees from Bath and Body Works. And I was like, Bath and Body Works, right? What does that have to do with financial services, albeit in a nonprofit environment? And they said, well, we always keep our eye on the local businesses, in this case, in Honolulu. And, we see as we go into a restaurant or a store or, any place where the leadership team is just living their lives, and they look and who look to be the star employees in that business. These leaders also carry their business cards with them. And if they find someone who they think would be a good fit for that organization in a teller or an administrative assistant or whatever role it might be, they give them the card right there and say, hey, we think you'd be a great fit for our organization. Here on the back is our website and our recruiting page. So take a look. We'd love for you to apply for some of our job openings. And if you do, mention my name. So I raise that for everyone here today to think about, as you're out at the ShopRite or the Walmart or, anywhere where your daily travels may take you, do you have your eyes open for potential talent that could be successful in your organization?
Thank you. Matt, Ed?
Yeah, I would just add that, I'm seeing obviously the biggest places that organizations are going are to Indeed and your Facebooks, and technology has become a huge play in recruiting. Just to dovetail a little bit on what Jennifer was saying, I think that some of the more creative recruiting methods that I've seen is from within, as Matt said before, where they're actually creating programs where existing employees can earn bonuses and earn some type of credits or bonuses that they can have access to for referring top candidates. So they're giving them a chance to earn in addition to their salary by getting them candidates that are similar to the way they were when they were hired. And so I think that is a very effective method of creating your own sales force. As Jennifer's saying, going out and being able to have your eyes open. If you're an employee and you're working for an employer of choice and you believe in that employer and you have the capability to earn additional compensation by referring good candidates, you might have your eyes open a little bit wider.
Yeah, to dovetail on that, the two things I would add on would be if you're not getting internal referrals from your employees, then you have an issue potentially with your workforce. So it's a way to check whether your employees are feeling valued already, because if they're not referring people to come work there, that could be a leading indicator as to some internal issues. And additionally, I would always, you're using your board. You have a whole bunch of people that are connected to the mission already that should be out there telling your story for donors as well as employees. So you have that, and they're in other sectors. Generally, a board is consistent of people with diverse backgrounds and diverse opportunities and those types of things. So, it's a way to engage your board as well. Everyone's talking about how do we attract or retain board members. This is another way you can leverage your board to get them closer to your mission, which will derive more board membership, and it becomes somewhat you're trying to create this big family that everyone gets along with each other and sort of helps each other along as well. So some ideas to think about.
Thank you. I think that we have all been somewhat inundated with a lot of information being shared about diversifying our workforce, and how when we bring people together with different skills and talents, and it really makes the company move and succeed. Are there strategies that you're seeing or places that employers are going to seek out a more diverse workforce? I know I can only speak from my own experience. I see quite a few employers now focusing in on candidates with neurodiversity and what they bring to the table. But there's all different types of people out in the world that really bring great stuff to the table. How are employers now kind of going outside of the norm to bring in a more diverse workforce? What are you seeing?
Right. Well, one interesting thing that I'm seeing, and it's not necessarily, oh, here's a great job board to go to, or, something along those lines, but actually starting from within and looking at our organization's job descriptions and doing a very thorough analysis on them. Job descriptions, that's the bedrock of everything that we do in HR. So we could talk for another hour on that. I will spare everyone that discussion. Suffice it to say, for today's program, organizations are now taking a close look at the language in those job descriptions. And there are different websites where you can go and they will give you a synopsis of what language is inclusive on that job description, what language may be more slanted towards white people versus people of color versus women versus men and so forth, to weed out some of those biases that might be built into the description, making it more inclusive to attract a broader talent pool. So that's one. And second, related to the job descriptions, is taking a hard look at our education and our experience requirements. Now, for some jobs, a certain level of education is required, right? If I need a CPA, they have to have that college degree and that license to do that job. But for many other jobs, the college degree may not be required, or maybe it's really an associate's degree that could be sufficient, or maybe someone who has lived experience with homelessness, for example, can do that job as opposed to someone coming right out of school with a bachelor's degree. So taking a hard look at our education, our experience requirements, and the language in the job description itself, and then posting those updated jobs to our various sources can bring in much more diverse candidates.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just to add to that, I think it's a given. I think employees are looking to work for employers that are supporting diversity, and I think that is going back to something we said before about selling your mission, making sure that your candidates and your current employees are connected to that mission. I think showing that you have a diverse workforce, assuming that you do have that. Showing that there are opportunities that have already been given for a diverse workforce is very important, because there's too much information out there. Employees are looking; they're going to look at your website. If you have employees in your staff directory, and you're showing all your employees are white males, that's probably not going to look too good to support your diverse candidates. So I would say, as you start to build that culture, assuming that you're supporting that initiative and that you're starting to do a good job of showing what you're doing, and make sure that that's evident on your website and on your recruiting.
Matt, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I think they covered it pretty well, so thank you.
So, Matt, I am going to go back to you for just a moment, because I know we have, from the NRH, have pushed out a lot of information about the New York Secure Choice Savings Program, but not, a lot of times our executive directors are very overwhelmed with their day-to-day trying to achieve the mission. What can you please, while we have our audience here, explain a little bit more about that and why it's so important for our nonprofits and those attending today to truly understand that?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, the New York Secure Choice Program was signed off by Governor Hochul the end of last year and is going to go effect at some point in the near future. And for argument's sake, if you're an employer with 10 or more employees that have been in business for 2 years, if you do not offer some form of a retirement plan, either 401k or 403b, you're going to be subject to this plan. And most people are getting inundated with this. How am I going to be affected? What does it mean? Those types of things. So it's out there. I tell everyone, it's much better, and I think people have seen this with a lot of the health insurance mandates, it's much better to create your own plan that works for your specific organization than go down the path of what the government's going to mandate you to do. So I would at least tell everyone to think about it, entertain a conversation around it, and figure out what's the best path, because if you don't, then the state's coming with this program that will have fines and penalties attached for it if you choose to ignore it as well.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything they want to add to that? Okay. Thanks, Matt. One of the things that our nonprofits face, especially with, I think, those in development positions and in fundraising positions, is a high turnover. There's a lot of burnout in those roles. And I think now, especially when maybe other organizations are sweetening the pot for those candidates, how do we, what are you hearing in terms of nonprofits addressing the concern of burnout? How do they keep those people who are in those very coveted roles? How do they keep them functioning, happy, mentally stable, and able to really do their role properly and not be attracted to go elsewhere? That's, I think that would probably be a burning question for a lot of people on this call right now.
I'll start. I saw a survey this morning where 94% of employees that were surveyed said they were exhausted at the end of the day, and 48% of them were considering leaving their employer in the next 6 months. So it is definitely an issue, a challenge for nonprofits. I would say some of the more creative things that we've seen. We work with somebody that actually is what they consider a stress mastery expert, and I've seen where employers have brought in outside resources to really get engaged with the employees proactively, not after they're burned out, but proactively in reducing stress levels at work. Now, whether that means infusing other types of flexible benefits like flexible schedules, or I've actually had employers where there's a dog walking around the office, and they're creating almost like a comfort dog that's walking around the office. And they have some creative things like I saw one employer had foosball in their office, and they had other games where employees were encouraged to take breaks throughout the day to support stress reduction, whether that be guided meditation. We're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing team building exercises like online Jeopardy or bingo, things like that, where employers are really encouraging their employees to take breaks throughout the day and be mindful so that they can reduce stress levels. And I think on a proactive level, by doing that, you can really impact not just the health of your employees, but the productivity of your employees long term.
Ed, I agree 100% with everything you've shared there, and you've given me some ideas as well. And really, this is a question certainly critical for the nonprofit sector and the for-profits as well. And if I can build on what you've shared here, I want to focus on vacation, paid time off, whatever you call it in your organization. It's there for a reason, right? It's there for us to rest and clean out the cobwebs and recharge before we get into that burnout state. And I know from so many of my nonprofit clients that they are very generous in the amount of time that they give their employees in PTO or vacation or whatever they might call it. So it's critical, one, to let people actually use that time, right? And not say, well, you can't take any vacation time because X, Y, and Z. No, let them use it and let them use it. And when I say that, I mean, if we're on vacation, whether we're staying home, whether we're traveling to Florida, whatever it is, that I'm not on Zoom meetings, right? 6 hours a day, or I'm not calling in from the beach in Florida, right? That's not a vacation, right? That's just working in a different place, right? So make sure, as hard as it is, right? Let your employees use that time to rest and recharge and plan out before they go. Who has to cover for that person, right? If there's some time sensitive things that may come up, or who's the on-call just in case, and talk with everyone ahead of time so they know what is that game plan and when is their vacation time coming up as well. So it's not just, oh, I'm covering for this person and then I never get a break. We have to have breaks, and we have to be able and comfortable to push back and say to those that we serve, yes, we're going to help you. We're going to give you your services. We can only go at a certain speed, right? There's just a pace that we can't maintain after a while, especially if people are taking and using their vacation, right? We're more efficient sometimes when we slow down, right? And take those breaks. And Matt, I don't know what you're seeing on your end. You may have some other insights as well.
Yeah, maybe a little different thought process is one, I would acknowledge employees' success. Like so often people just go back to, well, that was their job. Well, at the end of the day, we should be thankful that our employees are doing their job and figure out a way to acknowledge successes for the organization and the employees. So that would be one thing there. And the other thing that we heard the most out of the sort of the pandemic is generally finances is an employee's number one stress. Not necessarily their job, it's their personal finances is generally the average employee's stress. So think about that in the context of your employees. And what I mean by that is, how do you help your employees alleviate that stress? And the basic concept I tell everyone is help your employees understand how and when they can retire or do the things that they want to do. And if you can do that and just that one, that'll alleviate one of their single largest stresses. And generally speaking, if you think about it, people leave an organization, generally speaking, to get paid more. Reason they do that is they move because they know if I make more money at a new job, I'm closer to being retired. That's just a common sense, intuitive approach. But that's not necessarily always the case. So help your employees understand their financial stresses and how to alleviate it, whether it's having someone talk about student loan debt, or it's talking about debt servicing or credit monitoring, or all of these types of things. Those types of resources, your service providers, someone like Ed, Jennifer, myself, or the other people that you're doing, your payroll team will have those types of resources that they can bring them in and just try and help your employees understand that they're not alone. You hear their stresses and here providing them solutions, try and help them move forward.
Yeah, Matt, that's a great point. And I would say that one way of doing so is to support your employees on a one-on-one basis, right? So many times we run into benefit plans or retirement plans, they're on, autopilot, right? Where there's not a whole lot of education, or if there's education going on, it's on a high level basis. One thing that we do a lot of is we work with our clients, either proactively or somewhat reactively, meaning that it's passive and the employees can reach out to us for one-on-one education. However you're doing it, whether you require it or you just offer it as a resource, having employees have access to professional advisors, either financial advisors, benefit brokers, or providers, is so important because, I know on our side, we've sat in one-on-one education sessions where cost of health insurance has risen dramatically, which we've known that's been pretty consistent over the years. But along with that, deductibles and co-insurances have risen. And if they're not educated on that, they could make financial decisions on their benefits as well, their health benefits, that could really make an impact to them and detrimental in their financial life, whether that be they chose a high deductible plan, not realizing they had a surgery coming up, or things of that nature that can really impact their financial lives and thus infuse more stress into the situation. So I totally agree with that saying.
Thank you. So what it sounds like, I'm keeping track of time here and we're close to wrapping it up, but what it sounds to me is, we really need to work on our cultures, and that does not happen overnight. But one of the huge benefits to keeping and attracting an employee is to provide resources to help support them outside of even their work day. And to know that they have those resources and that support is really added value to their benefits and would attract them. I do want to ask the panel if are there other takeaways that you would like to reiterate to the group so they know, or if they have any other questions to ask outside of this particular webinar that we can help them with. Jennifer, I'll start with you.
All right. Well, thank you, Allison. Oh my gosh, there's so many things that we've talked about and explored today. My last comment to everyone attending or watching the recording is that, yes, it's a scary moment in many ways, right? For us in terms of attracting and retaining and engaging talent. Don't be afraid. Go into this proactively as much as you can. Do your research. Do your homework, talk within your organization, with your employees, with your marketing team, with your executive team if you are not part of that group, or if you are, make sure everyone's involved. So you've got a strategy that you can apply moving forward rather than some haphazard, let's try this, let's try that and see what works. Have a strategy.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ed?
Yeah, I think my last comment would be flexible. Things are changing dramatically over the years. They're evolving. I think the employer-employee relationship has evolved so much over the years. We used to talk about wellness strategies to employers, and the answer that we would get from the employer is it going to reduce my health insurance? And if it doesn't, then I don't want to do it, right? And that seems like eons ago, but it also seems like it was just yesterday. And I would say that now we're having really engaging conversations with employers about supporting their employees and starting to be more flexible in their thought process. I think there definitely was some resistance to remote, and some organizations are not they're going to have employees that they're just not going to be able to do their job remotely. And we understand that. But for those that can, I do think that for some, there was probably 50% that were resistant to it because they feared the lack of productivity, and probably another 50% that said this is the greatest thing since sliced bread because there's benefits like being able to reduce my workspace, or just having employees more mindful. So I think that flexibility and being able to adjust on the fly with just about anything that would come up and continue to focus on the employee as your greatest asset in the future, I think that will go a long way in developing that culture you're looking for that will help you essentially do better at attracting and retaining your top talent.
Thank you. Matt?
I agree with everything that they said. And here's one thing I would just sort of leave with to sort of think about, as Jennifer's talked about before, thinking about strategy. Over the last couple of years, the single largest group of people that left the workforce was working mothers, right? They decided to take a step back. I can't teach my kids, work full time, school, someone's sick, the school shut down, all of those types of things. So if you're thinking about how to attract, how do you bring those dynamic people that figured out a way to balance work life before back to your organization into the culture and the things that they're thinking now that's more important? Because what might have been important to them 2 years ago is probably different today. So think about that. And if you can get there, they've been and historically been some of the most dynamic and loyal workforces before. That's, I would say is just sort of, the secret sauce. Think about that out there, because they're willing and able to come back, but they're looking for the right opportunities to come back too.
Thank you. So be flexible, have a strategy, work towards your culture. None of this is going to happen overnight. And I think being patient with yourself and working with your board is really important in instituting these changes. There are tremendous resources out there for our organizations that are looking to do this. You have 3 amazing panelists here that you are welcome to reach out to, that I'm sure would be happy to help you along the way. We also offer additional resources. And, if you ever have a question, you're always welcome to call our office. Chances are we know somebody we can connect you with. I do want to thank our panelists today for your contributions. I really appreciate it. I do hope that our attendees found some inspiration and some creativity in moving forward. And again, I do encourage you to reach out to us with any specific questions, and we will be happy to connect you. If you're not part of the Nonprofit Resource Hub, I do want to encourage you to please join. It's very simple. You just go on our website, nonprofitresourcehub.org, and the applications are there. If you want to know what it's like to be a member, you're welcome to speak to any 3 of the panelists. You're welcome to call us. And I do hope that you will all attend our next webinar next month. Thank you so much to the 3 of you. I will leave you a moment for any parting words that you may have.
Oh my gosh. I think I'm speechless here now. This has been a great opportunity to connect with everyone. And certainly for those who are joining us in the audience, I'm happy to connect with any of you on additional or specific questions that you may have. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, same. Was very excited to be part of this panel when we talked about the topic. I think this is a topic that is so timely. And I think that Jennifer, Matt, you did a fantastic job today. So happy to be with you. I would encourage anybody that has any benefit related questions, even if you just want to bounce something off us, don't hesitate to contact us, reach out through the hub. We're here as your resource. That's what the hub is all about. And all of our members are supportive of that mission that the hub is trying to provide education and support to our members. So don't hesitate. Even if you just have a quick question, feel free to reach out. Happy to support you.
Thank you. Matt?
I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming today. It shows that you're caring and thinking about your workforce. So that's the first step there. So you're already halfway there. So now it's just taking a couple of little tidbits today and seeing how you can apply them.
Thank you so much. Thank you once again, everybody. I hope you all have a great week, and we are always here for you. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you again for participating.